Now, the Three Martini Lunch with Greg Corombos and Jim Garrity.
And welcome, everyone, to the Tuesday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. Along with Jim Garrity of National Review, also the author of Between Two Scorpions, I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. We have good, bad, and crazy martinis for conservatives today. All of it brought to you today by Blinds.com. For a limited time, Three Martini Lunch listeners can get $20 off at Blinds.com by using the promo code Martini. Blinds.com, promo code Martini for $20 off. More on that in just a moment. Jim, let's begin with our good martini. And yesterday we were kind of banging our heads against the table because as the Democrats were busy shooting at themselves in a circular firing squad, President Trump decided to weigh in with a series of tweets that at best was really politically stupid and at worst was just plain stupid and potentially racially insensitive, which a lot of people seem to agree with on both sides of the aisle. Trump is fighting back, and now you've got Republicans on the Hill fighting back as well. But the good martini is that the Democrats are following in Trump's footsteps. They had the momentum on their side, and then they just couldn't leave well enough alone, and now they are once again showing how radical they are. Case in point, yesterday's press conference up on Capitol Hill, Minnesota Congresswoman Ilhan Omar.
I have not made impeachment central to my election or my tenure. But since the day that I'd gotten elected, I'd said to people, it is not if he will be impeached, but when. So it is time for us to stop allowing this president to make a mockery out of our Constitution. It's time for us to impeach this president.
Jim, Ilhan Omar's pushing this. Al Green, who's been pushing this literally since the day Trump got elected president, or pretty close to it, is pushing this again, saying he's going to somehow force a vote, even if the leadership doesn't want one. I'd like to see how he does that. But what do you make of the Democrats now overplaying their hand?
You know, people who were listening yesterday heard me say and read what I was writing in the Jolt. Trump just absolutely stepped in it. He cannot help himself. In any given situation, just when he's got his enemies, at each other's throats, he's got to jump in. He's got to do the most politically stupid thing he possibly could. And of course, Greg, apparently the squad, the four House Democrats heard us and they said, hold my beer. To the extent they drink beer. Because look, one, there's the impeachment argument right after one of them said, we can't get distracted. Right after they said we need to keep the focus on the situation at the border and the separation of children from their families and all that stuff. And never mind that this crowd also believes that we should abolish ICE, that the children should not be separated, that everybody who's currently in these detention centers should be released as a family, and we just hope that they show up for their hearing several months later. While we're sorting out whether they actually have a legitimate claim of asylum or not. You add up all of their policies and it basically amounts to open borders. Now that's problem number one. She calls for impeachment, which, oh, by the way, according to the NBC News poll, is polling at about 21% right now of total support. The closer you get to Election Day, the more ridiculous it seems to go forward with an impeachment process that everybody knows is not going to get 2/3 votes in the Senate. And they also, you could say, my suspicion is that if Democrats actually went forward with this, you'd see a pretty strong backlash, not just from Republicans, who obviously would oppose it, not only from, a good chunk of independents, probably a decent majority of independents, and maybe even a certain amount of Democrats who basically would say, wait a second, we're going to have our chance to render our verdict on this guy. I want the chance to remove this guy from office. I want the chance to vote against this guy. This is our decision to decide about whether he deserves to stay in office or not your guys' decision. We've never done this before. And now we're going, you guys want to do this over. I mean, again, Al Green was pretty clear. He thinks the president should be impeached over his tweets. Now, if that's a new standard, we're going to have fine. But someday there's going to be a Democratic president who's going to say something stupid. And if saying stupid, incendiary things is the new standard of what you can be removed from office, fine. We're going to institute that rule for everybody, and you're going to have endless impeachments going back and forth between the parties. I think so. Both AOC and Omar did not really respond to questions about the guy who tried to firebomb the ICE facility up in Tacoma, Washington. Thankfully, the guy didn't do that much damage, although he did set a car on fire and was trying to ignite a propane tank. He was shot by police and killed. Apparently, he left some sort of manifesto. it's pretty straightforward. This guy hates ICE, hates immigration enforcement, and believes that, terrorism is now justified in opposition to this. AOC and Ilhan Omar, I think it's more accurate to say they simply ignored the questions that were shouted to them as they were going to the press conference. Nonetheless, I don't see them rushing to denounce this guy. And I think it kind of, it further adds to the fuel to this that, look, they, whether or not do they approve of this terrorism, they're just going to pretend they don't see it. They don't see any type of responsibility. Now, AOC explicitly said of other Republicans, if you're not denouncing him, you're endorsing him. Does that apply to terrorist acts committed against ICE facilities, Greg? By her own standards, they went down this path. This also comes after the protesters against the ICE facility in Aurora, Colorado, took down the American flag, put up the Mexican flag. I think that's going to show up in a Trump ad sometime between now and 2020. And also, finally, on top of all that, we can argue about whether it's fair to ask Ilhan Omar, does she support al-Qaeda, as Trump had said earlier in the day. I think that is probably not explicitly accurate. Although in today's Morning Jolt I laid out, she's got a long history of saying fairly controversial things, including the claims that the U.S. Soldiers in the Black Hawk Down incident killed thousands of Somalis. That is not in line with the historical records there. Some weird comments. Remember, some people did something on 9/11. She talked about how the tone of her professor, who kept referring to al-Qaeda as if he was kind of jittery about it. There's something a little unusual about the way Omar sees these things. But they put the question to her, do you support al-Qaeda? Now, most people, I think, Greg, if you ask that question, would say, hell no, I don't support al-Qaeda. I want to kill those bastards. To hell with them for what they did to us as a country. But instead, there simply was, I'm not even going to dignify that with a response, which is, I don't know. I think some people are going to look at that and they're going to furrow their brows. So top to bottom, those four House Democrats managed to play to type and managed to, I think, exacerbate the headaches for the Nancy Pelosi's of the world. They managed to, basically were given a gift by Donald Trump, and then they turned around and pretty much gave him a gift right back. This is where we are with our two parties, Greg.
It says a lot about our culture, and it's the Twitter culture, not just when you're literally on Twitter, but just the way our culture is now, is that there's just this instinct to most people, or at least a lot of people, that you've got to get the last word. Even if you've already won the debate, you have to have the last word. You've got to get that last zinger in there. And by doing so, both sides here have only done themselves damage.
The argument, I will never apologize. I will never back down. I will never modulate or adjust what I said. I will never say that that Trump brought that style to politics. I believe nobody's really found any time which he's ever, given anything resembling a full-fledged, heartfelt apology. He's always found some way to blame other people for being insensitive or insisting they misinterpreted him or something like that. But he never says, yeah, I shouldn't have said that. That is a style that has caught on. I don't think it's actually as bold or as strong or as all that stuff people think. I think actually you look like an idiot, doubling down over and over again when you find yourself in trouble. If you make a mistake, say so. I think people actually the American people have great respect for someone who could admit when they were wrong. But that's not in style these days, Greg, and this is the politics we have.
Wow. So if you're sick of politics and you just don't want to watch this ugly back and forth, you might just want to close the blinds. And to do that, Blinds.com is the way to go. Because for many of us, your blinds or whatever you have on your windows is kind of an afterthought. But with brand new, made-to-order custom window coverings from Blinds.com, you can really transform the look and feel of your entire home. So when you need new blinds, there's really only one place to go, Blinds.com. With 15 million windows covered and over 30,000 five-star customer reviews, Blinds.com is America's #1 online retailer for affordable, quality, custom window coverings. So whether you're looking for energy efficiency, you just moved, or you just want to refresh the look of your home, Blinds.com makes the whole experience fast and easy.
Plus, every order gets free samples, free shipping, and a free online design consultation. You just send them pictures of your house, and they send back custom recommendations from a professional who will work with your color scheme, furniture, and specific rooms. They'll even send you free samples to make sure everything looks as good in person as it does online. And remember, every order gets free shipping. This is the best part. If you accidentally mismeasure or you pick the wrong color, in other words, if you make a mistake, Blinds.com will remake your blinds for free. They've really made it easy for you. So there's no excuse to leave up those mangled blinds.
And for a limited time, 3 Martini Lunch listeners can get $20 off at Blinds.com when you use the promo code Martini. That's Blinds.com, promo code Martini for $20 off faux wood blinds, cellular shades, roller shades, and more. Blinds.com, promo code Martini. Rules and restrictions apply. All right, Jim, let's go to our bad martini now. And this one's going to seem really, really familiar because we were on the air with the podcast, 3 Martini Lunch, late 2010. And by that time, the Affordable Care Act, better known as Obamacare, had been put into law. But it was quite a bit after that we realized one of the central promises of that particular legislation simply wasn't true. Here's Barack Obama explaining that promise.
We will keep this promise to the American people. If you like your doctor, you will be able to keep your doctor, period. If you like your health care plan, you will be able to keep your health care plan, period.
Period. Yeah, not true. Lots of people lost their plans. Lots of people lost their doctors because if the plans changed in any conceivable way, you didn't get to keep what you had before. And so Joe Biden is now running for president. It's not even possible for him to run closer to Obama than he is. So he's rolling out his health care plan, literally calling it Obamacare 2.0. And guess what the central tenet of his plan is, as he says he's got the more reasonable approach than the Medicare for all approach.
So I give people the option. If you like your health care plan, not your employer-based plan, you can keep it. If, in fact, you have private insurance, you can keep it.
Jim, do you believe him?
First of all, you began with that, Greg, with the observation of when we were doing the show in 2010. We've been doing this for 9 years.
Yep.
Sorry, I feel really old right now. In my head, it was just 3 or 4 years ago. The other thing I'd point out from there, I mean, maybe this is the reason I feel like it wasn't that long ago, is because judging by this headline, Greg, or the comment from Biden, the news is in reruns. It's midsummer, original programming gets expensive. Let's just, in fact, maybe some of our listeners are like, Jim and Greg are in reruns. It's a greatest hits show. They're locked in a freezer. And they're thinking back to, remember the time when, Obama and Biden were saying, if you liked your plan. No, this is a real new program, folks. It's being taped on July 16th, 2019. There's 2 great ironies here. The first is that Biden is going to get a lot of grief for this. However, I think if you were really looking at how to change the U.S. healthcare system and healthcare reform and are there better ways to do this, the first thing you'd want to say is, well, wait a second. If people like the insurance they have, they get it through their employer, they find their copays and deductibles and all of that manageable. Well, you don't want the federal government coming in and saying, no, you can't have that anymore. We're going to change it. You have to accept that. That's what got Obamacare in so much trouble back when it went into effect in 2013. People have been told, if you like your plan, you keep your plan. And it turned out to be the lie of the year. Now, of course, during this time, a lot of Republicans and conservatives were saying, well, wait a second. If you impose all of these new rules and regulations, people who currently have plans will find those plans in violation of those rules and regulations, and thus they will lose their plans. And Obama said, nope, nonsense. Y'all drove the car into the ditch and drinking a Slurpee and all that. Look at all the doctors who were doing those unnecessary, tonsils for the black market on tonsil trade. What Biden is laying out as a principle here probably ought to be a principle. Unfortunately, and obviously it's an interesting principle that Kamala Harris and Bernie Sanders and a bunch of other folks who are doing Medicare for all have all said, which is that, no, you can't keep your plan. We as Democrats are telling you we will take you off of private insurance. Kamala Harris kind of flip-flopped a little bit, but in the end, she basically said, maybe we'll let you keep private insurance for a little while as we transition. But the goal is to get everybody under Medicare, whether you like it or not. And that, so Biden is saying this. Secondly, the elaboration he puts there, if Biden is not the nominee, then there's an excellent chance that, if the Democratic nominee is running on Medicare for all, that Biden's words will show up in a attack ad by the Trump campaign. So in a very strange way, Greg, I found myself feeling a few more molecules of appreciation for Joe Biden, telling things Democrats they don't want to hear. And, oh, by the way, managed to phrase it in exactly the way that it got him in trouble roughly a decade ago.
Exactly. This isn't the first time Joe Biden has gotten himself in trouble out on mic talking about health care. But even the public option, though, there's a lot of smart people out there. You've talked to them. I've talked to them, too, who will tell you that the public option is really kind of a backdoor to single payer because the government can just charge lower and lower rates until the private insurers simply can't keep up. So it's a slower path to single payer. It's not as abrupt as Medicare for all, but that is still the goal ultimately for those who want to go down that road. So don't think that they want you to stay.
At the core of this argument from folks on the left is, well, Medicare costs less, therefore we should put everyone on it. Well, okay, except the problem is that Medicare costs less because the government sets the terms of payment. They say we're only paying up to this amount. And doctors, if you accept Medicare patients, you gotta Medicare, Medicaid patients, you gotta do it. Now, most doctors look at this and say, well, I'm losing money on that deal. And some doctors will say, I won't take any of those patients. Some doctors will say, well, I will, but I'll only take as many as I can afford. When you put everybody onto the system where they're paying less than the value of the treatment, the whole system falls apart because nobody wants to do the treatment because they're going to lose money on it. But anyway, that sort of logic is too complicated for the lefties. And they really want their free lunch. They really want to believe that they can get exactly what they want and get somebody else to pay for it. And if we go down this road, Greg, we're going to see, headaches that will make Obamacare look like a mild Excedrin moment, because we won't even be able to get access to the Excedrin probably.
All right, let's move on to our crazy martini now, Jim. And we've seen this before. There are Republicans either toying or actually running against President Trump in the 2020 primary. You don't think about it often because it's irrelevant, but former Massachusetts Governor William Weld is in the race. Maryland Governor Larry Hogan kicked it around, decided not to do it. Now another famous, or you might say infamous, Republican political figure is thinking about challenging Trump as well. Let's go to roll call. Former South Carolina Congressman and governor, we should point out, Mark Sanford, who lost in a 2018 primary after President Donald Trump endorsed his opponent, is contemplating challenging the president. Sanford will make his decision about running for president over the next month, he told the Charleston Post and Courier Tuesday. Quote, sometimes in life, you've got to say what you've got to say, whether there's an audience or not for that message, Sanford told the Post and Courier. I feel convicted. So, Jim, I guess the campaign trail is better than the Appalachian Trail, but what do you make of Mark Sanford, who couldn't win a House primary, now thinks he's going to run for president?
I mean, first of all, if any of you kind of felt this weird shudder going through, it was not an earthquake, it was not an aftershock of Los Angeles or anything. It was everybody on Twitter rushing to do the exact same joke about, will he campaign on the Appalachian Trail? At the exact same time. They nearly broke Twitter by everybody trying to make the same joke at the same time. So the one thing that jumps out at me, look, Trump's going to be the 2020 nominee. Sanford would not be able to beat Trump nationwide. I don't think he'd be able to beat Trump in South Carolina. I don't think he even necessarily would beat Trump in the South Carolina's 1st congressional district, which, oh, by the way, I visit probably about twice a year when I visit my parents. This is an area that is pretty darn Republican, that is, some suburbs of Charleston and places like that, includes Hilton Head, includes Beaufort County, which is the fastest growing county in the state, last I checked. And they're pretty darn Republican folks. They're pretty darn conservative. Katie Arrington, running in 2018, challenging Sanford, basically made the primary a referendum on, I am loyal to Trump, Sanford is not. Sanford lost. I'm sure it stinks to lose. I am sure it hurts to lose. I am sure it is deeply frustrating to be, pretty darn indisputably fiscally conservative and then find out that a big chunk of your constituents don't care about that. However, Mark Sanford then chose to not endorse Katie Arrington. Mark Sanford, the rumor is Mark Sanford told his donors, do not donate to Katie Arrington, and told his supporters, don't vote for her either. On Election Day, Democrat Joe Cunningham beat Katie Arrington in a district that I want to say is like a Republican +9 or something like that. The last time they had a close congressional race before 2018 was that special election they had when Stephen Colbert's sister was running on the Democratic side against Mark Sanford. Democrats convinced themselves, it's Sanford, it's Appalachian Trail. This is going to be such an absolute, and of course he won by a fairly solid margin and had won fairly comfortably since then. So look, this is a Republican Party that is Trumpified. And so the really curious thing is that Sanford, I guess he's decided he wants to run on the issue of deficits and the debt and runaway spending. I think those are all good and important and legitimate issues, but I'll be, to be honest, Greg, I I think we've had that discussion in 2016. I don't see anything that indicates that the Republicans have suddenly changed their mind and are upset with Trump about trillion-dollar deficits coming back. I don't see any indication that people are all that worried about deficits and the debts. And so I suppose if Mark Sanford wants to run to make a point, all right, go ahead, pal. It's a free country. But what do you think? He's, nationwide, you think he cracks 5% if he's lucky? I guess the first question is how many people who still vote in Republican primaries are looking for a protest vote? And then how many are willing to go out and vote for somebody a protest vote when they all kind of know Trump is going to be the 2020 nominee? So does this mean he and Weld split the 4%, 2% each?
I got to give Sanford a little bit of credit, though. He knows he has no chance of getting this, which also makes him a bit delusional. But he just says sometimes in life you've got to say what you've got to say, whether there's an audience or not. I'm not sure that's the greatest political campaign slogan. I'm going to do this anyway is kind of his bumper sticker.
The other thing is that I guess he's not going to go off on Trump for messy marriages.
Probably not.
Right? I mean, the other weird thing is that we've been making fun of all these no-hopers and asterisks and gadflies who are jumping into the Democratic presidential race. My fear is, so Larry Hogan chose not to run because he's, got a real career, got a real job. He's currently governor of Maryland. And, I have a sneaking suspicion that he basically just talked about it for a while because he liked having more attention for a good 6 months or so as he was flirting with the idea. He wasn't really flirting with the idea. But the idea is that maybe now if you're a gadfly on the right side of the aisle, you've forgotten about, people have forgotten about Mark Sanford. And now if you want to pretend, you really like hanging out at the Holiday Inn in Des Moines and, the Hotel 6 up in Manchester and, giving speech to the local Rotary Club, hey, doing lots of cable news interviews and radio interviews, for some people, this is how they enjoy themselves. And my fear is that, we'll get a slew of we're just now in an era where everybody and their brother are going to choose to run for president because you no longer have to be a serious candidate to, be treated like a serious candidate by members of the media who should know better.
Yeah, a lot of people might not remember this now. It's been close to a decade, but between 2008 and 2012, as Sanford was wrapping up his second term before the scandal hit, there were a lot of people talking about him challenging Obama in 2012, but obviously he got badly derailed in that sense. And so I don't know if he still feels like he needs to test the waters, but it's such a fool's errand at this point. It's hard to imagine that anything productive will happen out of it, but we'll see. Jim, fun day as always. Talk to you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, Greg.
Jim Garrity of National Review, also the author of Between Two Scorpions. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks for being with us today. Don't forget our good friends over at Blinds.com, where right now 3 Martini Lunch listeners can get $20 off. And tune in again Wednesday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.